What if I told you that Iran and the United States used to be allies? That's right, friends, partners. The US even helped build Iran's nuclear program in the 1950s and called it a good thing. So, how did we get from that to airstrikes, hostage crises, and one of the most dangerous rivalries on the planet? Here's a quick video that explains it all.
You ever wonder how two countries can go from being potential friends to sworn enemies? Well, for the United States and Iran, it's a wild 70-year story of secret plots, revolution, and a whole lot of bad blood that still shapes our world today. So, how did a relationship that started with so much promise turn into one of the most stubborn conflicts on the planet? Let's get into it.
It's kind of hard to believe now, but this story doesn't start with shouting and threats. Way back, Persia, what we call Iran today, actually looked at the US as a friendly face, maybe even a protector against other big empires. Okay, now flash forward to today, and Iran is talked about as America's #1 rival in the Middle East. That is a complete 180. So what on earth happened?
To really get this, we've got to rewind the clock. Believe it or not, there was a time of real cooperation. During World War II, American troops were actually on the ground in Iran, helping to run things alongside the British and the Soviets. It was a totally different vibe, a growing partnership.
Which brings us to the big, obvious question. If things were going so well, what could possibly go wrong? Well, the answer really boils down to one single, massive event that basically poisoned the well for generations to come.
All right, let's talk about 1953. This is it. This is the moment everything changed. We're talking about a secret coup, planned from the outside, that planted the very first seeds of a deep, lasting mistrust.
So here's how it all went down. Iran's elected leader, a guy named Mossadegh, makes a huge call. He decides Iran's oil should belong to, Iran. He nationalizes the whole industry. Well, the West did not like that, not one bit. So the CIA and British intelligence step in and orchestrate a coup. The result? Mossadegh is out, the pro-American Shah is back on the throne, and Iran's oil is right back under Western control.
You can imagine this move was incredibly unpopular inside Iran. This wasn't just some political squabble over oil money. For many Iranians, it felt like a deep betrayal. And it created this grudge that just simmered under the surface for years and years, setting the stage for the explosion that was coming. Now, for a while after the coup, it looked like the US plan had worked perfectly. The alliance with the Shah got stronger than ever. America sent tons of money and military gear. And get this, talk about irony, the US even gave Iran its very first nuclear reactor under a program called Atoms for Peace. Yeah, a little decision that is going to become really important later on. Well, that simmering resentment we talked about, it finally boiled over. 26 years later, bam, 1979, the Islamic Revolution. If the coup was the first major crack in the relationship, this was the earthquake that brought the whole house down for good. And man, when things fell apart, they fell apart fast. In '79, the Shah gets overthrown. Just a few months later, the U.S. embassy in Tehran is stormed and 52 Americans are taken hostage. By the next year, the U.S. officially cuts all diplomatic ties, and they have never been restored. 444. Just let that number sink in. For over a year, this crisis was on the news every single night in America. It totally reshaped how Americans saw this new government in Iran, and it cemented this story of hostility that really we're still living with today. So after the hostage crisis, the gloves were officially off. What followed were decades defined by this relentless cycle of conflict, sanctions, and fighting through proxies. This became the new normal, a state of constant tension, from the Cold War all the way up to today's maximum pressure campaigns. And you can just see the pattern, right? In '88, they're literally shooting at each other's warships. The '90s bring a crippling embargo. In 2002, President Bush puts Iran in the axis of evil. We get a brief glimmer of hope with the 2015 nuclear deal, but that didn't last long. By 2018, it's torn up, and we're right back to sanctions and maximum pressure. And the source material we're looking at here describes this maximum pressure era as something that could escalate to an unprecedented level, even imagining scenarios involving direct military strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. So after all these decades of bad blood, it's clear this isn't just some simple political disagreement. The past isn't just the past here. It's what has forged this incredibly contentious relationship we see today. So let's just trace that path one last time to see how it all connects. It really is a clear arc. It starts with an unlikely friendship. Then that friendship is poisoned by the 1953 coup. The relationship is then completely shattered by the 1979 revolution. And what's left is decades of fallout, which created the hostile new normal we're still in today. So when you look back at this long, tangled history, a story defined by those two key moments in 1953 and 1979, you're left with one really tough question. Is this conflict just irreversible now? Has so much damage been done that there's no going back? That's the challenge this history leaves us with.